Captain Tay Wu-jin opened his eyes slowly. His head was pounding. His body felt like someone had beaten him with metal rods. He tried to move his hands, but cold chains held them tight behind his back. He was lying on a hard metal floor. The room was dark, but strange blue lights glowed along the walls. The air smelled wrong. It was too clean, too cold, and had a bitter taste that made his tongue feel dry. 3 days ago, everything had been normal. Tay was leading his patrol unit near the outer rim of human space. They were checking old mining stations and looking for pirates. Simple work. Safe work. Or so they thought. The attack came without warning. Ships appeared from nowhere. They were huge and shaped like insects with sharp wings. Before Tay could give any orders, bright lights hit his ship. Everything went white. Then, everything went black. Now he was here. Wherever here was. Tay heard footsteps. They were strange footsteps. Too many legs. Too fast. He forced himself to sit up despite the pain in his ribs. The door opened with a soft hiss. 2 creatures walked in. They were tall, almost 3 meters high. Their bodies were covered in hard shells that looked like armor. They had 4 arms and 2 legs. Their heads were flat with huge black eyes that reflected the blue light. Their mouths had sharp parts that clicked together when they moved. Tay had seen pictures of these beings before. Every human had. They were the Velen, the most powerful empire in the known galaxy. They had conquered over 200 different species. They owned thousands of worlds. And they did not like humans. Humanity had only been traveling in space for 80 years. In that time, humans had built colonies on 12 planets and made friends with a few peaceful alien races. But the Velen saw humans as insects. Small, weak, not worth their attention. Until now, it seemed. The 2 Velen guards grabbed Tay by his arms and pulled him to his feet. He tried to stand on his own, but his legs were weak. They dragged him out of the room and into a long hallway. The hallway was made of something that looked like glass or crystal. Through the walls, Tay could see stars. Millions of stars. And below them, a planet. It was massive and purple with rings of silver dust around it. Cities covered its surface, glowing like spiderwebs of light. This was the Velen throne world, the center of their empire. The most powerful place in the galaxy. Tay felt fear in his chest, but he did not let it show on his face. His father had taught him that. Show no fear. Fear gives your enemy power over you. The guards took him through many hallways and past many doors. Other aliens watched him as he passed. Some were Velen. Others were different species that Tay did not recognize. All of them stared at him with curious eyes. A human. A real living human. How interesting. How amusing. Tay could almost hear their thoughts. To them, he was like an animal in a zoo. Something to look at and laugh about. Finally, they reached a massive door. It was made of gold and covered with symbols that Tay did not understand. The door opened slowly, and the guards pushed him inside. The room was enormous. The ceiling was so high that Tay could barely see it. Hundreds of aliens stood on both sides of a long walkway. They wore beautiful clothes and expensive jewelry. These were the nobles and leaders of the Velen Empire. At the end of the walkway was a throne. It was made of black stone and covered with glowing gems. And sitting on that throne was the most terrifying creature Tay had ever seen. Queen Mura. She was larger than the other Velen. Her shell was dark purple, almost black, and it shined like polished metal. She had 6 arms instead of 4. Her eyes were like 2 pools of liquid darkness that seemed to see everything at once. A crown of silver and gold rested on her head. She had ruled the Velen Empire for over 500 years. She had destroyed armies. She had crushed rebellions. She had ended entire civilizations. And now she was looking at Tay like he was a piece of dirt on her floor. The guards forced Tay to his knees in front of the throne. He fell hard, and pain shot through his legs. But he did not cry out. He would not give them that satisfaction. Queen Mora leaned forward slightly. When she spoke, her voice came through a small device near her throat. It translated her words into English, but her voice still sounded cold and cruel. So, she said slowly, "This is what humanity sends to challenge us. This is their warrior, their soldier." She made a sound that might have been a laugh. Pathetic. The nobles around the room clicked their mouths together in agreement. The sound filled the hall like rain on a metal roof. Tay stayed silent. He looked at the floor. He counted his breaths. He tried to think clearly despite the fear and the pain. "Look at me, human," the queen commanded. Tay raised his head. He looked directly into those dark, endless eyes. He did not look away. Something changed in the queen's expression. It was small, just a tiny movement. But Tay saw it. She had not expected him to meet her gaze. "You are brave," she said. "Or perhaps just stupid. We shall see which." Tay finally spoke. His voice was rough from thirst, but steady. "I was not sent to challenge you." "Oh?" The queen tilted her head. "Then why are you here, little human?" "I was sent to observe." The room erupted in laughter. Hundreds of aliens clicked and howled and made sounds of amusement. The idea was funny to them. A human, observing the mighty Velen Empire. What a joke. But Queen Mora did not laugh. She studied Tay with those cold, intelligent eyes. She saw something in him that the others missed. Something that made her curious. And in the Velen Empire, when the queen was curious about something, she did not destroy it. Not right away. 3 days passed. Tay was kept in a small cell with no windows. They gave him water and some kind of food that tasted like wet paper. He ate it anyway. He needed his strength. During those 3 days, he thought about his home. He thought about Earth and its blue oceans and green forests. He thought about his mother, who still lived in the old city of Bizan. He thought about his younger sister, Yuna, who was studying to be a doctor. He wondered if they knew he was alive. He wondered if they were looking for him. On the 4th day, the guards came again. They did not speak to him. They simply grabbed his arms and pulled him out of the cell. This time, they took him to a different place. It was a large room with medical equipment. Velen doctors examined him. They looked at his wounds. They scanned his body with strange machines. They spoke to each other in their clicking language, and Tay did not understand a word. Then they cleaned him. They gave him new clothes. Simple black pants and a black shirt. They treated the cut on his head and wrapped his broken ribs with tight bandages. Tay did not understand why they were helping him. Prisoners did not get medical care. Prisoners did not get clean clothes. Something was happening. Something big. After the doctors finished, a new Velen entered the room. This one was different from the guards. He was smaller and older. His shell was gray with age, and he walked slowly with a slight limp. "Human," the old Velen said through his translator. "Do you know why you are here?" Tay shook his head. "The queen has decided to honor you," the old one said. There was something in his voice. Was it pity? "You will fight in the arena of submission." Tay had heard of this arena. All spacefaring species had. It was the place where the Velen broke their enemies. Champions from conquered worlds were forced to fight there. They fought until they lost. They fought until they begged for mercy. And when they begged, the whole galaxy saw that the Velen were the strongest. "You will face our greatest champion," the old Velen continued. "Lord Keth. He has never been defeated. He has killed warriors from 60 different worlds." Tay felt cold spread through his body, but he kept his face calm. "And when I fight him?" "When you lose," the old one corrected. Your species will formally surrender to the Velen Empire. Earth will become our property. Your people will serve us. Now Tay understood. This was not just about him. This was about all of humanity. If he lost, if he begged for mercy like all the others, the Velen would use it as proof that humans were weak. They would invade Earth. They would enslave his people. The weight of that truth pressed down on him like a mountain dot. The old Velen watched him carefully. You are afraid now. Good. Fear is honest. The others always pretended to be brave at first, but they all broke in the end. He turned to leave, then stopped. I almost feel sorry for you, human. Almost. Hours later, Tay was led through underground tunnels to the arena. He could hear sounds above him. Thousands of voices. Millions maybe. The clicking and humming of countless aliens waiting for blood. When he finally stepped into the arena, the noise hit him like a wave. The arena was massive. It was shaped like a bowl, and seats rose up on all sides until they touched the sky. Every seat was filled. Velen nobles in expensive clothes. Aliens from 100 different worlds. All of them staring down at the small human standing alone on the sand. Giant screens floated in the air, showing his face to everyone. And not just everyone here. Tay knew this was being broadcast across the entire galaxy. Billions of beings were watching him right now. He looked up at the royal box. Queen Mora sat there on a smaller throne. She watched him with those cold, dark eyes. Beside her stood generals and advisors and other important Velen. A voice boomed across the arena. People of the Empire, today you will witness a historic event. A human has been chosen to enter the sacred arena of submission. The crowd roared with excitement. He will face our undefeated champion, the destroyer of armies, the breaker of worlds, Lord Keth. A gate on the opposite side of the arena opened. The ground shook with heavy footsteps. And then Tay saw him. Lord Keth was a monster. He stood over 3 meters tall. His shell was blood red and covered with scars from 1,000 battles. His forearms were thick with muscle, and each one ended in claws that looked like curved swords. His eyes burned with hunger for violence. Keth walked to the center of the arena. Each step he took made the ground tremble. He looked down at Tay and made a sound of disgust. This? Keth said, his voice like thunder. This tiny thing is my opponent? This is an insult. The crowd laughed and cheered. A Velen official approached Tay and handed him a weapon. It was a simple blade, about the length of his arm. The metal was dull and slightly bent. Tay looked at the blade. Then he looked at Keth with his natural armor and his deadly claws. It was not a fair fight. It was not meant to be fair. It was meant to be a show. A demonstration of Velen power. Queen Mora raised one of her 6 hands. The crowd fell silent. Let the combat begin, she said. A horn sounded across the arena. Keth smiled. It was an ugly, terrible smile. He started walking toward Tay, slowly at first, enjoying the fear he expected to see. But Tay was not looking at Keth with fear. He was looking at Keth the way a scientist looks at a problem. Studying, analyzing, learning. Keth roared and charged. His speed was incredible for something so large. The ground exploded behind him as he ran. Tay waited. He watched. At the last possible moment, he dove to the side. Keth's claws cut through the air where Tay had been standing. The champion spun around, surprised and angry. Lucky, Keth growled. That was lucky. He charged again. And again, Tay dodged. This time, one of the claws caught his shoulder. Pain burned through his body. Blood ran down his arm, but Tay did not attack. He just kept moving, kept watching, kept learning. The crowd began to grow restless. Where was the fight? Where was the blood? Why was the human just running? Keth was getting angry. His attacks became faster, but sloppier. He wanted to end this quickly now. He wanted to crush this annoying little creature. Stand and fight. Keth screamed. Are all humans such cowards? Tay did not answer. He was too busy counting. He was counting Keth's steps, his breaths, his movements. He was finding the pattern. Every warrior had a pattern. Every fighter had a weakness. Tay just needed to find it. The fight continued. The crowd booed. The queen watched in silence. And Tay kept waiting for his moment. 20 minutes had passed. Tay was covered in blood. Some of it was his own. Cuts decorated his arms and legs where Keth's claws had found him. His ribs screamed with pain every time he breathed. His legs burned from constant movement, but he was still standing. The crowd had stopped laughing. They had stopped booing. Now they watched in confused silence. No one had ever survived this long against Lord Keth. Certainly not someone so small. So weak. So human. Keth was breathing hard now. His attacks were slower than before. Anger had made him tired. Every swing of his massive arms took energy. Every missed strike made him more frustrated. What are you doing? Keth demanded. His voice was rough with exhaustion. Why will you not fight? Why do you just run like a scared animal? Tay stopped moving. He stood in the center of the arena, chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Blood dripped from his wounds onto the sand below. I needed to understand you first, he said quietly. Keth laughed. But there was no humor in it. Just anger. Understand me? There is nothing to understand, little human. I am stronger. I am faster. I am better. That is all you need to know. Tay shook his head slowly. No, that is not all. In the royal box, Queen Mora leaned forward. Something was changing. She could feel it. The air in the arena had become different, electric, dangerous. I watched you fight, Tay continued. Every step, every attack, every movement. You are powerful, but you are predictable. Keth's eyes narrowed. What? When you turn left, there is a small delay. Your right side opens for half a second. When you raise your upper arms, your lower right is slow to follow. And when you prepare a killing blow, you always look at where you want to hit first. The crowd murmured. These were not the words of a scared victim. These were the words of a hunter. Keth roared with rage. He charged at Tay with all his remaining strength. His claws cut through the air in a deadly pattern. This would end now. He would tear this human apart. But Tay was already moving. He ducked under the first strike. Rolled left when Keth's right side opened. Came up fast beneath the champion's lower arm and drove his blade into the soft joint where the armor was weakest. Keth screamed. Purple blood sprayed across the sand, but Tay was not finished. He pulled the blade free and moved again. Keth swung wildly, but Tay was not where he expected. He was behind him now, then beside him, then in front again, moving like water. Like wind. Every strike found a gap. Every cut hit a weakness. 30 seconds of perfect violence. When it was over, Keth was on his knees. His arms hung useless at his sides. His body was covered in wounds. The great champion, the destroyer of armies, had been defeated by a creature half his size. The arena was completely silent. A billion beings across the galaxy stared at their screens in disbelief. Tay stood behind, Keth with the blade against the champion's throat. One push, and it would be over. One movement, and the greatest Velen warrior would be dead. Queen Mora rose from her throne. Her voice echoed across the arena. Kill him. Finish it. The words were a command. In the Velen Empire, the Queen's commands were absolute. To disobey was death. Tay looked at the blade in his hand. It would be so easy. Keth had tried to kill him. Keth would have killed him without hesitation. The whole empire expected blood, but Tay thought about something else. He thought about what it meant to be human. He thought about all the wars his people had fought, all the times they had chosen violence when peace was possible, all the mistakes they had made. He thought about what he wanted humanity to be, not what it had been, what it could be. Slowly, Tay lowered the blade. Then he dropped it. The sound of metal hitting sand was the loudest thing in the universe. A gasp rippled through the arena. Confusion, shock, disbelief. Keth turned his head slightly. He could not understand what was happening. Why was he still alive? He fought with honor, Tay said. His voice was calm but loud enough for the translators to carry his words everywhere. I will not execute a warrior for doing his duty. He turned to face the royal box. He looked directly at Queen Mora. This was forbidden. This was dangerous. But he did it anyway. Where I come from, Tay said, strength is not just about killing. It is about knowing when not to kill. True power is having the ability to destroy and choosing not to. That is what it means to be human. Queen Mora stared at him. Her face showed nothing, but something moved behind those dark eyes. Something she had not felt in centuries. The nobles around her were clicking urgently. They demanded action. They demanded the human be killed for his disrespect, for breaking the sacred rules of the arena. But the queen raised her hand, and they fell silent. Interesting, she said. Just one word. But it carried the weight of galaxies. Guards rushed into the arena. They grabbed Tay and pulled him away. He did not resist. He had done what he needed to do. As he was dragged through the tunnels, he heard the crowd beginning to buzz with noise. Millions of voices trying to understand what they had just seen, trying to make sense of the impossible. A human had defeated their champion. A human had shown mercy. A human had challenged everything they believed about power and strength. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 different worlds, beings who had been conquered by the Velen looked at each other with new expressions. Hope. That was what they felt. For the first time in centuries, they felt hope. And hope, as Queen Mora knew well, was the most dangerous thing in the universe. The days after the arena fight were strange and confusing. Tay was not put back in his prison cell. Instead, he was taken to a room that looked almost comfortable. There was a real bed with soft sheets. There was a window that showed the purple sky of the throne world. There was food that actually tasted like food, but he was still a prisoner. Guards stood outside his door at all times. He could not leave. He could only wait, and so he waited. Outside his room, the galaxy was burning with questions. The broadcast of the fight had been seen by trillions of beings. On every world, on every station, in every corner of known space, beings were talking about the human who defeated Lord Keth. They were talking about the mercy he showed. They were talking about his words. True power is having the ability to destroy and choosing not to. Those words spread like fire. They passed from mouth to mouth, from screen to screen. They reached worlds that had been silent under Velen rule for thousands of years. On the planet Earth, where the Velen had crushed a rebellion 3 centuries ago, old warriors whispered to each other in secret meetings. If a human can defy the Queen, they said, maybe we can too. On the space station Nexus 7, where 100 species lived under Velen control, workers stopped their labor to discuss what they had seen. The Empire is not as strong as we thought, they said. There is another way. And on the throne world itself, in the halls of power, Queen Mora faced the biggest crisis of her long reign. Her advisors were furious. They demanded the human's death. They demanded a public execution to show that the Empire was still strong, to show that mercy was weakness, to show that nothing had changed. But Mora knew the truth. Something had changed. Something had broken. And killing one human would not fix it. On the seventh day, she made her decision. 2 guards came to Tay's room. They told him to follow. But they did not grab him roughly like before. They did not treat him like an animal. They walked beside him like he was almost an equal. They took him through secret passages, away from the public halls. Finally, they reached a small door made of dark metal. The guards stopped and stepped aside. "You go alone," one of them said. Tay looked at the door. He took a deep breath. Then he pushed it open. The room behind it was small and simple. There were no golden walls, no expensive decorations, just stone and metal and soft blue light. In the center of the room, Queen Mora waited. She was alone. No guards, no advisors. Just her. Tay entered slowly. The door closed behind him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just looked at each other. The most powerful being in the galaxy and the human soldier who had shaken her empire. "You have created a problem for me," Mora finally said. Her voice was different here, softer, more tired. "My empire is built on fear. Everyone obeys because they are afraid of what happens if they do not. For 3,000 years, this has worked perfectly." She moved closer to him, her 6 arms folded behind her back. "But you have introduced something new, something I have not dealt with before." Tay met her gaze. "Hope?" Mora made a sound that might have been a small laugh. "No, something worse. Doubt." She walked to the window and looked out at her world. The cities below glowed in the fading light. "Hope is easy to crush," she continued. "You simply destroy the thing that people hope for. But doubt is different. Doubt lives inside the mind. It whispers questions that cannot be answered. It makes beings wonder if the truth they have always believed is actually a lie." She turned back to him. "You made them doubt." Tay did not apologize. He did not look away. "Maybe your truth was always a lie." Another being would have died for those words. But Mara simply studied him with those ancient eyes. "Your species has been traveling among the stars for less than a century," she said. "You have no great armies, no ancient technology, no powerful allies. And yet you stand before me, speaking to me as if we are equals." She paused. "Why? How?" Tay thought carefully before answering. "Because we have spent our whole history fighting ourselves." Mora tilted her head. "I do not understand. Humans have always been at war," Tay explained. "Country against country, group against group, person against person. We have done terrible things to each other, things that still make us ashamed." He walked to the window and stood beside her, looking out at the alien city. "But we have also learned from those wars. Every time we destroyed, we learned to build. Every time we fell into darkness, we found our way back to light. We learned that survival is not about being the strongest. It is about adapting, changing, finding another way." He turned to look at her directly. "Your empire has been doing the same thing for 3,000 years. Conquer, control, crush. It has made you powerful. But it has also made you blind. You cannot see any other path." Mora was silent for a long time. The light outside grew dimmer as the sun set behind the mountains. "My advisors want you dead," she finally said. "They say a public execution will restore order, will remind everyone that the Velen are supreme." "And what do you want?" Tay asked. The Queen's mandibles clicked softly. "I want to understand. I want to know how a species so young, so small, so weak by every measure I know, became so stubborn, so unbreakable." She looked at him with something that was almost respect. "You looked me in the eye," she said. "In the arena, in the throne room, here now. Not with fear, not with false courage, with curiosity, as if I was not a monster to be feared, but a puzzle to be solved." She paused. "No one has ever looked at me that way." It is strange, and strangely valuable. Tay did not know what to say. He had expected death. He had expected torture. He had not expected this. What happens now? He asked. Queen Mora turned away from the window. That is what I must decide. For the first time in 500 years, I do not know the answer. And I find that both terrifying and exciting. She walked to the door. Rest, human, eat, recover your strength. We will speak again soon. Then she left, and Tay was alone with his thoughts and the dying light of an alien sun. The news came on a cold morning 3 weeks after the arena fight. Captain Tay Wu Jin was being released. The announcement shocked the galaxy. Everyone had expected his death. The Velen Empire did not show mercy. The Velen Empire did not free prisoners. It simply did not happen. But Queen Mora made it happen. She appeared on screens across known space. Her face was calm and unreadable as always. Her voice carried the weight of absolute power. The human warrior has proven himself in the sacred arena, she declared. He has shown strength and discipline worthy of respect. He will return to his homeworld, not as a defeated prisoner, but as a recognized warrior of the galaxy. The message was clear. This was not mercy. This was acknowledgement. The Velen were saying, without actually saying it, that humans were more than insects. They were more than prey. They were something new. Tay was given his own ship for the journey home. It was a small Velen vessel, fast and elegant. As he prepared to leave, a guard brought him a message. Queen Mora wanted to see him one last time. He found her in the same small room where they had spoken before. This time, Lord Keth was there too. The great champion looked different now. His wounds had healed, but something else had changed. The fire of anger was gone from his eyes. He stood quietly, almost peacefully, as Tay entered. Before you leave, Mora said, I wanted you to see something. She gestured to Keth. The champion stepped forward. I have lived for 300 years, Keth said. His voice was rough but calm. I have killed more enemies than I can count. I believed that killing was the only truth, that the strong must always destroy the weak. He looked at Tay directly. You could have killed me. You had every right, every reason, but you did not. He paused, struggling with words that were clearly new to him. I do not understand why, but I want to understand. I want to learn what you know about strength. Tay was surprised. He had expected many things, but not this. You want to learn from me? He asked. Keth nodded slowly. The Queen has named me ambassador. I will travel to human space. I will live among your people. I will study your ways. Mara spoke again. This is my answer to the problem you created, human. You showed the galaxy something different. Now we will learn what that difference means. Tay looked at the Queen. He saw something in her eyes that had not been there before. Not weakness, not fear, but openness. A willingness to consider that her empire might need to change. Thank you, he said simply. Mora made that small sound that might have been a laugh. Do not thank me yet. Change is slow. My empire is vast. Many will resist what you have started. The future is uncertain. The future is always uncertain, Tay replied. That is what makes it worth living for. The journey home took 7 days. When Tay's ship entered Earth space, a fleet of human vessels came to meet him. News of his release had traveled fast. He was already a hero before he touched the ground. The landing was broadcast across all human colonies. Billions watched as the small Velen ship descended through Earth's blue sky. Billions watched as Captain Tay Wu Jin stepped out into the sunlight of his homeworld. His mother was there. His sister Yuna was there. They ran to him and held him so tightly he thought his ribs might break again. But he did not mind. He was home. In the weeks that followed, Tay was given every honor humanity could offer. The United Earth Council awarded him the Star of Valor, the highest military decoration. News networks called him the man who changed the galaxy. Children played games where they pretended to be him. But Tay did not want fame. He did not want power. He wanted something simpler. He asked to return to service, not as a commander or a general, but as a teacher. He wanted to train the next generation of Earth soldiers. In his classroom, he taught many things. He taught combat tactics and survival skills. He taught strategy and discipline. But most importantly, he taught the lesson he had learned in the arena. True strength is not the power to destroy. It is the wisdom to choose. Years passed. The galaxy slowly changed. Lord Keth kept his promise. He lived among humans for 5 years. He learned their languages. He studied their history. He ate their food and watched their entertainment and played their games. When he returned to the Velen Empire, he was a different being. He spoke to other Velen about what he had learned. Some laughed at him. Some called him weak and foolish. But others listened. Others began to wonder if there was truth in his words. More species reached out to humanity. They sent diplomats and traders and students. Not because humans were powerful. They were still small and young compared to the ancient empires. But humans represented something different. A third path between conquest and submission. Queen Mora never publicly admitted that Tay had changed her. But she quietly canceled 3 planned invasions. She opened talks with species her ancestors had ignored for millennia. She allowed reforms that would have been unthinkable before. One day, a historian asked her why. Why had she let the human go? Why had she changed her ways? Mora was silent for a long time. Then she said something that confused everyone. He looked at me like I was worth understanding. Not a monster to fear. Not an enemy to fight. Just a being with thoughts and feelings like any other. She paused. No one had ever looked at me that way. It made me realize something I had forgotten. That even the powerful can be lonely. That even empires can be wrong. Tay lived the rest of his life on Earth. He married a woman named Hana, a pilot who had been part of the fleet that welcomed him home. They had 2 children who grew up hearing stories about their father's adventure among the stars. On quiet nights, Tay would sit on his porch and look up at the sky. He would find a distant star where the Velen throne world orbited. And he would smile. He had gone to space as a soldier. He had been captured as a prisoner. But he had returned as something more. He had shown the galaxy that there was another way. That mercy was not weakness. That understanding was not surrender. That humanity, for all its flaws and mistakes, had something valuable to offer the stars. And across 1,000 worlds, in the hearts of beings who had known only conquest, a single truth took root and began to grow. True strength is having the power to destroy and choosing not to. That was the lesson of the human soldier who stunned the alien queen. That was the legacy that shocked the entire galaxy. And that was the beginning of something new.